from Ministry of Films, and today we shall be talking about aging in cinema and different portrayals of the same. And we'll be speaking with Tanuja Chandra ma'am, who will be joining us right about now, and whom I'm a huge fan of. To be honest, I've watched a few of her films. So especially her recent three films worked for me big time. Which were Qarib Qarib Single, Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha, and she's joined away. Yes, waiting for her. Ma'am, hi ma'am. Am I
Hi, hi.
visible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Perfect. So this week on this channel, we generally every week we have a lineup of a different topic, and this week we had a lineup of films about aging, which had films uh, from Hindi films like Saransh and Aakho Dekhi to films like 45 Years, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Until the End of Time, and of course the film you recently directed, Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha, which I'm a huge fan of. I
Thank you.
watched
Thank
it
you.
because of the I think Mami had this thing where you could purchase the film to watch at home.
Yes, yes,
Uh, and I was really excited because I couldn't catch it at the festival, and
yes.
I watched it. It was blown away, and it was I found it. I watched it twice. Like thankfully the
Oh,
link was available in 24 hours, and the film is very short. So I watched it a couple of times, and I want to start off with I love how the protagonists are people whom I do not see a lot on
yes,
cinema.
yes.
So I want to start off with is that something which comes as a concern to a lot of makers that people aren't used to seeing protagonists this age?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, actually, in Qarib Qarib Single, the female protagonist, her age was originally supposed to be 50, and by the time the film got made, and with all
Right.
sorts of pressure from all sides, we ended up reducing it to 35. And
Yeah,
imagine that 35 is considered already as a
yeah,
ship
it's
that has
middle
sailed.
aged, especially for women in cinema.
Yes, yes, it's ridiculous. So, in this film, of course, my two aunts who are very old. I mean, the older one now is 94. Uh,
Right.
and, I had always wanted to make a film about them because they're cute, they're funny, they have this, joie de vivre, and they just love life. And especially, there's a kind of a new life that has come into them ever since, they are just on their own because their husbands passed away a long time back, children are grown up, them they don't need to be with them anymore. uh, so this is a life that actually is quite perfect. And I just thought that to me it's even now, it's very sad and surprising that we should feel as a culture that we have nothing really to learn from old people. That old people have lived past their prime, and they have nothing of value to give to society. Whereas actually we should think in the opposite way, because a person who's almost lived a century long on this earth, how can they not have anything of value, to contribute? So yeah, so it is definitely a concern to me, and I do hope. Hindi films are very traditional. God knows when they'll change, but maybe with the advent of digital shows,
Right.
we'll start to explore how much there is to really explore, which is entertaining, which is emotional, which is cute, which is everything in terms of storytelling.
So, with our conversation, when one of the main threads we spoke about would be aging in cinema, I also thought about in Qarib Qarib Single, there is with Irfan's character also. There's a it's like it looks like he's almost in a midlife crisis, right from where, and with and I found and it's dealt with in a very funny way, and it really
Yes.
worked for me. But if you look at it deeper, there is some sort of existentialism in that character over there who is taking life as it comes, but he has his own reasons. It's not just for making a character funny,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
for you is like when you are writing characters who are, so I recently saw an interview where it was, I think, a Tamil directors roundtable for a film that's going to come soon, in which people mentioned how the directors were mentioning how in films the heroes and the heroines are generally 25 to 35-year-old men and women, and those
Yes.
are the protagonists and
Yes.
nobody else. So even
Yes.
in Qarib Qarib Single, of course, an Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha, it's 85 and 92, and it's a
Yes.
documentary which didn't get
Yes.
released. But even in Qarib Qarib Single, it was a commercial rom-com per se,
Yes. Yes.
and it got a proper release and all. And the actors are a lot older. The characters are a lot older. So how did that get commissioned and everything? Basically, like. Uh,
Well, let me be honest. When Irfan said yes, is really when people started getting excited. Because the thing with him is that he is, the thing with him was, unfortunately, I still speak about him in the present tense. Was that he, of course, was older, but such a fine actor and so
and
relatable, and eventually had ended up also becoming a star, which he totally deserved. So I think but we hadn't really seen him as a solo romantic hero. So even
right.
he was quite anxious about it and nervous about it actually. That will people like me? Will they think I'm just being foolish? And. So I was just like, listen, love really should not have any age boundaries, and it should not have a cutoff point to fall in love. And especially this character, he's like been in love all his life, so um, so I think that of course after he said yes to the film, and he took a long time to say yes to the film, because he used to, was was the type of actor who would think for a long time and really get acquainted and get intimate with the character, and the day he decides that he loves him is when he would say yes. But even after that, to cast the heroine whose point of view really the story was told from,
You're right. Right.
was when it actually took off. And like I said, that we had by then reduced the age sufficiently
Yes.
to for people to think, okay, fine, people will be interested in this kind of fun story, and I'm glad that people liked it, because it just goes to show that it's not true that age necessarily has to be, in the, that protagonists necessarily have to be in their 20s, because what life had they seen at that point, really, actually. At least a person in their 30s and the man being in his late 40s has seen a decent amount of life, and so I was really happy that, honestly, that film has grown with time, I mean, even
100%.
today, yeah, 2 years later, uh,
Yes.
people watch it, and send me messages, and I'm just really happy that I got to make it, because that is really the success of a film, actually.
Yeah, and if you notice, it stays, right? I'm saying Qarib Qarib Single, when it released, it was decently successful. But later on, after it dropped online, I think the amount of people who discovered it there is a lot more. Even and
Yes,
with time it happens. Or for example, I'll give another example of something that released a year after that, which was Badhai Ho,
yes,
where actually the protagonists are the parents, right? Are
yes,
played by Gajraj and Neena Gupta. If you
yes,
look at it, it's
yes,
Ayushman actually supporting, and it
yes.
was the film
And the
opened
and the
well,
older
but then
guys, and the older ones are the ones we love, actually. You know?
yes, absolutely,
Yes,
that's the love
yes,
story, right?
yes,
The
yes,
poem scene or so many romantic scenes, they really work. So I think it's a myth that because if the audience had such preconceived notions, then they would be disappointed with Badayo, but they were surprised.
yes,
They
yes,
were very
yes.
happy, and so it's a proof,
And
and
because
it
because
happened.
we all in our lives, I think the audience also sees that in our personal lives, we have parents, relatives, aunts and uncles who are very much like that, and
Right.
whom we would love, if they're in a marriage, we would love for them to rediscover their love. And if they're single, we would love for them to be married, so, or
100%.
find love. So I think that movies should reflect that. It's also actually the fear, and somewhere the traditional attitude of producers and of directors and of writers. We fear. I don't fear. I would love to really go completely out of the box and push the envelope a lot. But fear that the audiences are going to be like, oh, who's interested? I mean, at the start of my career, used to hear this about women. Oh, who's interested in women's stories? Now it's who's
Right.
interested in old people's stories.
Yeah. And I'm saying, like in the 80s, when Saransh was also done by Mahesh Bhatt, I watched the film recently, to be honest, like less than a year ago. That's the first time that I discovered it, and it stays, right? It is amazing. I think after almost 40 years, a
Yes,
film like that stays. So it's beautiful. It touches my heart, and I haven't experienced any of it, but I've
yes,
seen people around me,
yes,
and I think like if everybody is included, that changes and a point of view also.
yes.
So
Yes. And
that does
honestly,
happen.
even if you haven't experienced old age, you and many, of course, I know that India is a fairly young country, and so many people haven't experienced that age. But how can it lose to experience it and to learn about it? How can we lose by doing that? How can we not gain actually by doing that? There's a beautiful. I think it's an African proverb, which goes something like this: that when an old person passes away, it's as if an entire library has been burnt down. Because
Right, because
with them is
knowledge.
gone this huge experience and knowledge and learning and culture. My goodness, how can we not want to archive that? Actually,
100% correct.
Yeah.
And I about Aunty Sudha, Aunty Radha. Getting back to the film, I want to also talk about the entire chocolates bit, which was my favorite. Where I was actually giggling all throughout those. I think there's 3 4 minutes in the pre-climax where there's a bit about just chocolates and about how there's a sneaky chocolate eating habit. So,
Yes.
making it like, did you intentionally make it humorous or just because you knew them? So you knew that it would take that kind of a genre tone. Or what did you think of it?
I actually, of course, because I knew them and I knew that they're extremely funny women, and they had always, through my childhood and through my growing up years, they were affectionate, funny, cute, but for me, it became a story when, there's like these two sisters who live in a village by themselves with this kind of adopted family, that loves them, looks after
Right.
them. They look, and these two look after them as well. It's kind of like, this is what a perfect world should be, where we learn to coexist with each other. So I had personally, because I am given to sort of really, I love moments of deep sorrow or grief or heaviness. I had thought there would be lots of that too. Uh, it just ended up being lighter, and it ended up being also my editor Chandan Arora. He kind of felt that this was the beautiful thing to explore. My producer Anupama Mandloi, for whom this is the first production, she also liked the fact that it's easy, it's light, it'll make people smile. Let's not always go into that expected route where old people are sad and old people are lonely. These two are not lonely, they're not sad. Yes, they're unwell, I mean, they can't walk, but then they have walkers and they eat what they want. They eat chocolates in the middle of the night. Why? Because they don't care what the doctor says. I mean, we all want that kind of freedom, right?
Of course. And but because you're saying that you expected there to be some amount of grief and sorrow, and you um, so I want to ask you that while looking at them live their lives a certain way, did that affect your outlook on life and about aging in particular?
Yes, actually it did. And even them, when they talk about death, they have spoken about dying, they've spoken about being left, which one will go first. All this they've spoken about, but with this kind of nonchalant manner, which is that, listen, we all have to go at some point, and the younger one says that, she's much older than me, she's bound to go first. So, there's a kind of a humor even in that, So to me, it was just amazing to watch the grace with which you deal with old life, old age. Uh, the kind of easy going manner where you don't dwell on it all the time, where it's not something that's bothering you, that, oh my God, I've reached the end of my life. Now I have only so many days left. I mean, the older one is pretty sure she's going to live to be 100, which is why
Yeah.
even the domestic help said that, So I thought that actually is a really great attitude for a kind of a life which is, after one the busyness of one's life goes away, one retires to a quieter life, uh, where we still laugh, where we still have lots of camaraderie with people around us, where, the women, the old women of the village come and celebrate Holi with us, So this kind of same thing, but because I personally am not a rural person, right? I don't think I could ever retire to a village, but I can see this kind of life in a city, right? If I choose
Right.
to live with happiness and to not dwell on and to to think of how can I still fill my life with more experience, with more happiness, So it did, yes, it did, and I would love to actually even make features with these kind of characters,
And it's like you said so many times, it's not just about the fact that it's not just about the age, but also the gender, right? I also thought of
Yes.
it as something which has a very feministic undertone, because both the women have so much agency, right? And
Yes.
they do whatever they want to do. There is there is nobody to dictate their life at that age in a village. And with so many people who watch it in a city, in cities, even I stay in a city, so over here we all just have this perception that okay, all the wrongs are happening in the villages, but I think it is about who makes what of their life and where what is, like there are a lot of restrictions at certain places, and it was amazing. There's there's one question which I found very interesting. I'm just pinning that comment. Yeah, so there's this comment which says, "Will that influence your future films?" So the entire uh, experience, will that influence your future films? And I want to ask this in a way that I'm sure he's asking that in terms of perception, but I also want to ask that in a way that will that affect, say, even if your lead is a 25-year-old, will that affect your other characters? I want to ask it in that way,
Sure.
and of course.
Actually, that's a really good question because, of course, I mean, I have nothing against a lead being a young person, uh, but I think possibly their first closeness and leading to an openness, that that it's youth is not necessarily the most sort of powerful thing alone. Old age can have power, it can have beauty. Of course, the fact that these two are women, um, somehow I think two brothers may not have had the same kind of life, because I do think that two brothers may have spent a lot of time complaining, frankly, and saying that, oh, I'm ill, and oh, I need this, and now I don't have that. Whereas these two
Yeah.
have had such a tough life that they're done with complaints. Now they only want to have a good time, so they want to be happy. So I think that it's a really good question, and I should bear that in mind for myself as a storyteller. That it's important to bring these elements consciously into our storytelling. Where we try to sort of create respect, create sort of a need to imbibe wisdom from older people. Why? Not just because that's a great saintly way to be, but it'll equip us better as when we grow older.
Right.
So I think that is what we need to, because old people, I'm telling you, it's just they're treated really badly in this country and
Correct.
across the world, and I think that
Correct.
needs to stop. So
Correct. There's a follow-up question to that which just came to my mind, where there's a review which I just read yesterday of a film which dropped a couple of days back, uh,
yeah,
and it's a negative review where this woman, it's a very well written review where she's talking about how the supporting characters in a rom-com, which are basically the parents and everything, they just have they're just given one line quirks, and that is
yeah,
the reason why they exist.
yeah.
And I want to ask, one, if you have any examples where that wasn't done in your mind, if that comes, and also about how do you think that can be avoided.
So I mean, I the first example that comes to my mind is not a rom com, but it's, I think, one of the greatest movies ever made in India, which is Mother India. Which a lot of young people have not seen, and I would totally
Yeah.
recommend it because it's dramatic, it's emotional, it has a strong plot. It's not what you imagine an old film to be all about, and it has at its center this powerful older woman, who's a hero, just a great hero, and uh, that's where a role person is not a supporting character. And of course, she's the mother, but she's the main character. In rom-coms, I'm sure there are a couple, very few, not too many,
What
where
the one which comes to my mind is, I think Dum Lage Haisha had great supporting characters who didn't have quirks. If you've seen the film, it was that they had reasons for everything that they were saying, and
yes.
that's the only one which just can come to my mind. I mean, I'm not able to remember a lot because I can remember those quirks where they're opposing for a marriage, but you have no idea why they're opposing.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes.
or
They're basically there to just make the plot sort of go ahead for the young people. Um,
right,
and they're just not written with great affection, because if you love a character, you'll obviously flesh them out. You'll make them complete. You'll make them lovable, and not just oddballs. And not just funny. I love oddballs, but oddballs have a heart. They have a depth. They have experience. They've gone through pain, and they've gone through um, life's trials. So I think even oddballs need to be justified and need to be given their place, in
right.
society and in movies. So it's sad that you and I together can hardly come up with names.
I want to get to one more thing where it is from aging of just characters to aging of actors, right? Where I think actors in, at least talking about Hindi, actually most of India, at least wherever I see, wherever commercial films are made, is just actors don't want to age, right? They're not ready to believe that they will age. So
Yes.
because when I saw that, when everyone's saying, "Oh, Amir Khan played an old person in Dangal," and I'm like, okay, that's the closest to his. Hello, is it me whose internet went, or is it ma'am? Can anyone? Okay,
Now I
hello.
can hear you. Sorry about that. Yes, can you hear me?
No, no. Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Sorry about
So I
that.
want.
Yes, yes.
No, no, that's okay. So I wanted to talk about how when I researched, I was like, okay, so many people said that, oh, Amir Khan played an old man in Dangal and everything, and that is actually closer to his age than most of the characters he's played in the past 10,
It's
15
true.
years,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, is it do you think actors are not comfortable with aging because of the fact that old characters do not have longevity, or do you think it's just a mental block? What do you think? And
Well, it actually comes the from our culture, from culture, not just Indian culture, but the world over. Youthfulness, looking young, the billion-dollar makeup industry, it's all towards that. That you, oh my God, you look much younger than you are, is a compliment. So I think the world loves youth. Why? Because businesses love youth. Businesses are geared towards young people. It's only in the last few years, much to my happiness, it was discovered that single women, whether they're divorced or whether widowed, or for whatever reason, single women have now become a kind of a demographic that actually advertisers are looking at and paying attention to. Otherwise, this was not a category that you would want to sell products to. So it all comes down to who is the buyer, who are you selling to, which means movies are also eventually supposedly that I would prefer that to categorize, and I wish for the day when they are considered art more than just commerce. Um, but yeah, so it comes from that. It comes from the fact that youth is the altar where everybody worships, and so the actor would want to keep playing, younger people. Men especially
right.
can be in their 50s and play much younger characters. Women, on the other hand, are much older, are not, when they grow a certain age, then apparently the roles have dried up. So I think
Yeah.
that is the main reason. It would be great for people to say that I'm 35, I'm 40, I'm 45, and I'd love to be playing an older. Parvati in Qarib Qarib Single. At the time we made the film, she was 28, and she had no problem playing a 35-year-old. Had it been a 40-year-old, she would have had no problem. That's really kind of an emancipated sensibility, and a way of looking at things. So because why? Because what's wrong? What's the problem?
Yeah, it's
I
correct.
so I would wish for that attitude much more. It's rare. It's not everybody. A 35-year-old actress would still prefer to play somebody in their 20s. A 50-year-old actor would love to play somebody also in their 20s.
Yeah, with and what about the 25 or 30-year-old actors playing a 70-year-old, right? Do you okay, I'm hinting at a film which came out last year, which was Sandkiak, where there was some outrage from a lot of media people, also audience, and also a senior actor who later on said that she didn't mean it in the same way, but she also said that these are roles being taken away from her.
Sure.
So do you think it is wrong to cast somebody in a role which is older, and why? Like, what do you think?
I mean, just as one quick example, of course, Anupam Kher was, I think, 29 when he played the old man
Yeah.
in Sangharsh.
Yes.
He played it beautifully, but
Yes.
he was not a big star at the point. So that's at that time.
Yeah.
So it is an
Well, it's
important
first
thing to
film.
remember. Yeah, yeah. So now the issue is that a younger actress or actor would play an older character because they're stars, right? Because that would get the film funded, you know. Which of course I do think, while principally it's okay that a younger actress should want to take up the challenge of playing an older person, because the body language and the whole experience of 60 years is bound to be different from the body language of a 25-year-old, and so it's a big
Mm.
challenge. So I don't principally disagree with a younger actor wanting to take it up as a challenge, but that should be the reason. It should not be because the actor is a star and therefore that's the only way to get the film funded. Which, by the way, I have been on this side throughout my career, so I do know what a big difficulty that is to get a film funded. I know that if I come up with the casting of an older character, unfortunately, there'll be very few producers who will be willing to fund that film. Why? Because they'll say nobody will come to watch it. So it's actually a really vicious circle. Who says nobody will come to watch it? Try it. Have we ever tried it? No, we haven't. But that risk-taking, sort of faculty is low in Bollywood. People don't. They're risk averse. They don't want to take risks. So I would be delighted to see a fine older actress play a beautiful old character's role. It would be so refreshing. Uh, but I can see why a producer and a director goes with a younger one, because again, they're like, how do we, this distributors won't buy our films, exhibitors won't be excited about giving us cinema halls. So, it actually has to change in its very foundation. It's not just one part of the problem. The entire thing has to change.
But also, yeah, with this, I want to get to like how you had said right in the start of this conversation that you see changing with OTT and everything coming into play. So I want to ask, so all these reasons won't be there then, right? Of
No, it's not as it's not as perfect as that. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I
correct.
wish it was, but even in OTT, there is there is more freedom, but it's not absolute freedom. It is still half and half, I would say. But I'm extremely delighted that a huge group of very talented actors who 10 years ago would have been struggling for roles are now, struggling to have free dates. Actually, they don't have dates to give to producers because they're so busy. And I think that's fantastic. And I think more of that should happen. More of that should happen so that we don't have the same few stars to choose from. We should be spoiled for choice. We should have 50 stars to choose from and say, should we go for this one? Should we go for this one? My goodness, there are too many. It still is too few right now. And so, one goes from one to the next, to the next, to the next. They're all busy, of course. So, like honestly, I'm not saying that Hollywood does not have a star system. It does. But they also have so many brilliant actors to choose from, you know that you just for especially uh, for online shows, for the digital shows, for supporting casts. there's great actors to choose from. So yes, it is better. I'm hoping someday it will be even more of a wider playing field.
Yeah, and over there, I also see that like there are a couple of old female superstars, right? Like Meryl Streep still can get funding for a lot of big films over there, right? Like I'm saying, Spielberg, while making The Post, said that I was able to make this film in my own way because I had got Meryl Streep in right in the beginning. So
Absolutely,
I just think
absolutely.
over there that is possible. Over here also it can be. It is just the trust system is like I think everything is blamed upon the audience
Yes, and also, but
because
but but actually, the onus lies as much on the producers and directors and writers, really.
right, 100%.
So it is half and half. I'm not saying that the audience is free of blame. The audience needs to, but I do feel that if you give them something that is beautiful to watch, why will they not want to watch it? They will want to watch it. Judy Dench, for example, I mean, she's in her 80s,
100%.
and she's still such a sought after. She's a brilliant actress. And so many other older actors like that. It would be so beautiful to have our own really, really sort of fine uh, actors in their 70s and 80s who are sought after as much as younger actors. But for that, we have to have stories made for them. First of all, stories written for them, and then funded for older characters. See, like for example, I mean, like my documentary, Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha. Now, of course, we for the last 2 years we've traveled the world around into many festivals and have received so much affection. And now this month we are in Amsterdam in of course an online festival. And we are also in Cincinnati, and we're going to be on Mubi soon.
Yeah, on the 20th.
So the thing is that uh, yeah. So but it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort behind it. We have to all push it. You and I and everybody has to consciously all the time be reiterating this. I mean, from the
Right.
start of my career, which is over 20 years ago, I've been saying the same thing over and over again, that we need to tell female stories. We need to not shy away from that, and I'm abidingly, dedicated to that. So I think all of us need to always be encouraging and be asking for more films that are and shows that are about, say, older people, that are about minority communities, that are about that have characters from LGBTQ, that have characters who are mentally disabled or physically disabled. We need to encourage this and actively seek it. Then some change will come about.
Well, so just this is off topic, but I just want to put in one line where I had watched a Monsoon Date a couple of years ago at Mami as a part of a double short film feature. One was yours and one was Nagaraj Manjule's film. And I had when I watched it, I had absolutely loved it. It featured in our Pride section in the Pride month, and I had absolutely loved that film. I think I think that's also streaming on Eros now, and
Yes, yes.
this
on,
and
on Geo
Aunty
as
Sudha
well.
on
It's
Geo
also
Cinema.
streaming there. And of course, we've been also the world around in festivals. And in fact, this week it's showing Hanover, Germany. So, so the thing is that, the idea is for it to keep getting seen by people, to normalize trans people, to normalize the fact that, that every human being is legitimate and equal in the eyes of nature. This is not unnatural. Nature does not discriminate. Human beings discriminate. So
Right.
so so these things should keep getting seen. And so my endeavor is that, okay, great, that Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha is traveling, Monsoon Date is traveling, other films made by other filmmakers should keep traveling. So that the world starts to accept these subjects more.
Right. And I love that you're actually walking the talk, where these things that
Yes.
you believe in, this is actually stuff that you've done recently, and these are the two films that you made after a rom-com which worked, which is still receiving love, and that is very, very interesting. Where you you're continuing that. So I want to ask, what's next?
Okay, so what's next is, of course, I mean, I can't give you details yet because it hasn't
Yes.
been announced. But yes, there is a series that I've been working on, which will continue this sort of love of mine for female characters, for minority characters, for characters who are not from your mainstream. Um, so I think that like you and I discussed that the digital platforms do allow us more freedom to be able to do that. And so that's next for me. There's also a feature that uh, all of last year I was writing. Of course, things have all become delayed this year because of COVID. But so there is also that feature that I'll be doing at some point this year. Pretty much is seems to have been cancelled, but I've made use of it. Made use of it because it's what better time than this to write. So one has been working on scripts. So next year
Right.
production.
Perfect. I want to, my last question is that you started off with, say, a comparatively bigger film with known actors, which was Sangharsh, right? Of course, at that point,
No,
these
this one.
stars
This
weren't
one was my first film.
okay. Right? Okay, even that's a commercial film.
Yes,
and
but I have to say that it was not a big film. It was not because again there also, and at that time this was 1998. I'm talking about
right.
female protagonists were hardly ever seen. So I did have to sort of make it in a controlled budget. It also got greenlit because Sanjay Dutt agreed to do a small role in it.
Okay,
So these are issues that
speaks
I
a
have
lot.
been battling right from the start.
Yeah, speaks a lot. But I was getting at, you started with, say, so-called commercial films which had
Yes,
Sanjay Dutt, which had
yes,
Akshay Kumar, and
yes,
of course, like Akshay Kumar wasn't, like, he was a star, but he wasn't as big a star as he is right now. But still, he
yes,
was a star, right?
yes.
With and then to come to films which are Sur and Zindagi Rocks, Qarib Qarib Single, to making a documentary and a short film recently. People do the opposite, right? People take it as, I want to go from this to this. People think of it as that the final aim is making the big film. What I'd say, I'm glad. I've really liked your previous
Thank
three
you.
films more than any of your previous films, because your previous three films work for me big time. So I'm very happy. I don't want that to change just personally, but I'd want to ask, what did anything affect that change, and how did that happen?
I guess one finds one's true voice as one advances in you know uh, being a director, especially. It's being a director and a writer is very much about sensibility, the kind of tone you want to have, the kind of voice you want to put out there. I always knew that was interested in female stories. That was a clear thing from me right from the start. It was not so easy to manage that in terms of getting funding and all that. It still isn't, but now much more possible. It's possible to have a film that has only a female, like a heroine in it, and you don't have to cast a male star. Yes, your budget will be lower. There's no doubt about that. But one manages in those budgets. So I think that I think I've developed my voice through these years. I've stayed at the crease. That's the most important thing. That it's easy to kind of go through a kind of a low phase where then you give up and then you start to feel that, oh, this isn't working out. Nothing that I'm doing is actually turning out to be as beautiful as I want it to be. But so I stayed at the crease, and I just knew that it'll turn when I start to develop more of an original voice. A voice that is truly something that is mine and I love. I mean, I would say that even Dushman and Sangharsh were, but these are more my voice,
Right.
and this is the direction that I want to continue in, uh, and I do feel, I know it sounds a little sort of filmy, but I do feel my best is yet to come. So I'm gonna
Right.
go with that.
Of course, I'll be waiting for that. I've really liked your recent work a lot, and
Thank you.
I'd say that I'd put it out again. Aunty Sudha Aunty Radha will be available on Movie India from the 23rd of this month, and guys, please watch it and just let ma'am know. Let us also know how you like it, because I would love to talk about that film with anybody.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for being
Thank you
here.
so
Thank you
much.
so much for giving your time.
Thank
This
you.
video shall be available on the page for perpetuity on IGTV. So please, whoever hasn't watched it from the beginning can watch it. Thank you so much, man. Thanks a
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
lot.